Meanwhile, according to the Russian media reports, Ukraine is ready for neutral status negotiations with Russia, but it must get some security guarantees. Now, all of this are, of course, on the basis of reports where Volodymyr Zelensky's office has announced its readiness for status-neutral talks. This has come as the Russian Defense Ministry has said that it has managed to destroy at least about 118 Ukrainian military infrastructure sites, including about 11 military airfields during an operation in Ukraine, adding that more than 150 Ukrainian soldiers have also laid down their arms and have surrendered in the face of hostilities. Now, media reports also suggest that Russia will be deploying paratroopers to help guard the Chernobyl power plant. And Russia has confirmed that radiation levels in the area of Chernobyl power plant are normal. This is what the Russians claim, although the Ukrainian claim has been that the radiation levels have been on the rise ever since the Russians have taken charge of the Chernobyl power plant. Meanwhile, to give us a bit more perspective in terms of what the Russian objective has been as a part of this invasion into Ukraine, we are being joined by Franak Vyakorka, who's been a senior advisor to Svetlana Tikhanovskaya, the Belarusian human rights activist. Now, Mr. Vyakorka, thank you very much indeed for joining us in this broadcast on WION. And let me begin by asking you this. This invasion that Russia has carried out into Ukraine yesterday, the Russian army, we're given to understand, is virtually on the gates of Kyiv. There is fighting that is taking place there. What do you think has been the objective of this Russian incursion into Ukraine?
That's a very interesting question, because there is no real need to start this invasion and make this assault. I think Putin is trying to change the entire world order. He's basically trying to employ the revisionist approach to politics. He believes that Ukraine belongs to traditional historical sphere of influence of Russia, and therefore he wants somehow to show that this is his land, this is his territory. And he didn't find any better mean to prove this except military invasion.
And also looking at how the West has, of course, responded to this entire crisis, even as we speak, there seems to be very little unity in terms of what the West's response needs to be in this crisis in Ukraine, where a lot of nations, led by the United States and other European nations, have not been able to come up with a cohesive set of sanctions that could actually deter Russia. Do you think sanctions as a strategy will work against Russian aggression?
Sanctions are needed. Sanctions are important. It's not a silver bullet, but sanctions can raise the cost for Putin to continue this assault on Ukraine. But sanctions must be joint, must be coordinated. They must be adopted by UK, US, Canada, by allies in democratic parts and democratic regions as well. And it's also important to provide assistance to Ukraine, diplomatic, financial, military, because the future of Europe and the future of democracy is being decided right now in Ukraine, but also in Belarus.
Absolutely, indeed. And the other question that I want to ask you is, will Russia be satisfied with the regime change in Ukraine? Do you think that would be the objective that the Russians are working towards? Or, as some commentators have now been talking about, is Russia looking to try and dismember Ukraine as a nation?
I think in Putin's mind, Ukraine does not exist. He doesn't recognize independence, neither of Ukraine, nor Belarus, nor other post-Soviet states. He believes it's part of Russia. But I think he wants to establish the puppet regime, the puppet government, like he did basically in Belarus. We have Lukashenko, who is formally president of an independent country, but he is the vassal for Putin and Kremlin.
You know, in Ukraine, the experience of the Russians to try and establish friendly regimes in Kyiv has not ended well. In 2014, the former president of Ukraine, who was seen as very friendly to Moscow, was in fact removed by the people. Is that something that the Russians would even consider now, because they could install another sort of a friendly president in Kyiv who could again be deposed by the people?
This is exactly what Russia perhaps underestimates, because it's not only enough to conquer the country, you have also to be able to manage it and to have the public support. It's impossible to rule the country where everyone hates you, no one accepts you and your ruling. So I think it will be a big challenge as well, when even if Russia will take, I hope no, Kyiv, it will not be able to, you will not force people to love you.
So how do you see this conflict going forward? Do you think fighting will continue for weeks to come, or do you think there will be a quick end to this conflict?
In the next few days, we will see the result. We will see if Russians were able to put a substantial part of Ukrainian territory under its control. We will see what is the morale among the Ukrainian soldiers, and we will see what is the Western reaction. So far, it's not enough. But if the West will act firmly, quickly, with sanctions and other tools, then it's possible to stop this invasion. This will be decisive.
You know, policy analysts who are looking at what is unfolding in Ukraine would in fact say that the reason why we are here in this particular juncture where the Russian tanks have rolled inside the Ukrainian territory is because the political dispensation in Kyiv at this point of time wants to ally itself more closely with Europe. It wants to be a part of the NATO military alliance. And NATO has said that it will not bar Ukraine from joining the NATO military alliance, which is the reason why the Russians have now moved into Ukraine. Do you think there's a problem with the policy that NATO military alliance has when it has to induct new members into it?
I think Ukraine is trying to move to Europe and to NATO because it feels safe there. It feels like this is the right thing to do because Europe gives prosperity and openness and transparency in a relationship. But I don't think this is the real reason of Putin's behavior right now. I think for Putin, it's very important to come to history with the legacy of the strong leader who united Russian Empire land under his rule. And I think this is the real motivation for him. But every nation in 21st century has the right to decide its own future. And no military force can force people to change their opinion and prevent them from choosing their future.
Absolutely, indeed. Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Franak Vyakorka, for joining us and getting us all those insights into this very complex crisis that is unfolding in Ukraine, where Russian troops, we're given to understand, are virtually on the outskirts of Kiev, and it remains to be seen as to how the next 24 to 48 hours unfold, because these remain very crucial in this crisis. WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.